My name is Kita. This is Psychopath Exposure, and I want to talk about the love bombing stage. I want to talk about the idealization phase that takes place when you meet somebody that seems to be overly excited about the possibility of getting into a relationship with you. If we're talking about narcissists and you've done your research on the topic, then you may have already noticed that this is a pattern. This is a pattern amongst not just the whole narcissist thing, but also borderline personality disorder has similar traits like that. You might even hear somebody that's histrionic that goes through something like that. Sociopaths, psychopaths too. They tend to get really, really excited about their new supply. That's that buzzword that you hear. The new supply, narcissists tend to treat people like sources of supply as opposed to human connection. So when they're grooming someone, that's also a common word that you might hear when looking up the love bombing and idealization phase. It's the grooming stage. Okay? In the grooming stage, well, the word pretty much tells you what it is. The predator, in this case the narcissist or the psychopath, is grooming their new target. They're grooming their new source of supply or their future supply. We all went through our own experiences, but they're very similar. Only the names and the faces were changed or swapped out. But you do remember at the beginning when you met the narcissist, you do remember how excited they were to call you all the time, to text you all the time. Remember those good morning texts that you started getting immediately upon hooking up with them, and the good night texts that you used to get, and all the emojis that would put on those texts, all the compliments, all the future plans that they would make with you about the future, all the things that they told you that you pretty much wanted to hear. You wanted to hear those things. Who doesn't want to hear those things? We call it grooming because of what happens next. You get groomed, then you get attached, you fall in love, you become dependent on these toxic individuals, and then just like that, they'll flip a switch and they're no longer that excited about you or about the possibility of spending the rest of their life with you. And whatever it was that they used to love about you, now they don't like anymore. In some cases, they despise it. In some cases, you're the worst thing to walk the face of the planet. When just a few months ago, they used to worship the floor that you would walk on. The reason I wanted to make this video, I want to go a little bit deeper, because the idealization works both ways too. And I've noticed that over the years, I've been working with a lot of survivors of narcissistic abuse, a lot of survivors that come to YouTube or have been turning to social media as this topic has grown in so much popularity lately. And what I've noticed over time is that people that have come out of a marriage or come out of a long-term relationship, and that's right, older people, and I don't mean necessarily by an age. I'm not talking about a high school relationship. I'm not talking about your high school sweetheart. I'm not talking about someone you met at university. Even though, especially now with the rise of narcissism, this happens too. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But I'm talking about those who have already been in a long-term relationship with somebody. Maybe a toxic relationship. Maybe a marriage that was really, really abusive. And you got out of that marriage or you got out of that relationship. Maybe you were hooked up with an addict. Okay? Maybe you were hooked up with a drug addict or an alcoholic or just someone that was very, very controlling, or just someone that you were simply not compatible with. Maybe you were in a sexless marriage. I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot from men, believe it or not. A lot of men that have been in sexless marriages. and then they get out. Finally, they're out of that, and they meet a girl that's much younger than them, okay? Much prettier than their ex-wife. And they're head over heels. And they fall in love within a week, within 2 weeks, right? And of course, assuming that girl or that woman is a narcissist, because that's why they call me to talk about how they met a narcissist. And I listen to their story. And yeah, I hear the narcissistic traits from the qualifier, and we go through that, and we work through it, and I explain how it works and what they're feeling, yada, yada, yada. But you know what I also notice, and these are the patterns that I notice with victims of narcissistic abuse at a later age, is that they've been so miserable. They've been so deprived of affection. They have been so deprived of true, unconditional love, that when they meet one of these disordered individuals, when they meet a narcissist, when they meet a borderline, like, imagine you've been deprived so long of the very thing that these predators offer you in abundance at the very beginning of that entanglement. You will have probably the best sex you've ever had, and you will have it often, and you will do things that were your biggest fantasies, and you're doing it with someone new, sometimes someone younger, sometimes someone more attractive, right? Someone that has more things in common with you than your ex did. And you're like, this is my soulmate. I finally met now I understand why I had to get out of that situation, because this person was the one that was waiting for me on the other side. And what's frustrating about that is because a lot of times in life, you're in a tough spot and you finally develop the courage to get out. And like they say, God had a bigger plan for you, and something good is waiting for you on the other side. Things have an expiration date, and there's a lot of relationships that seem good in the moment, but they have an expiration date. Sometimes people just want to go off to college. I dated this really beautiful girl for a very short time, and we had a great time during that short time. And she had a good family. They had a lot of money too. would have been really good for both of us, right? To combine incomes and build, right? But she went off to college, and I wasn't ready for a long-term relationship. I don't believe in those things. And the minute she went off to college, and it was to get her master's, by the way. It was just going to be 1 year, but we didn't have a foundation long enough to say, hey, cool, you're going to go do that, right? Maybe I'll come up there and stay with you for like a month at a time and come back and work something out. No, we didn't. The minute she got there, she started partying and drinking, and she would call me drunk, and I was like, I can't deal with this right now, you know? I don't encourage people to be in long-term relationships because they don't work. But we're talking about like the basic foundation. And sometimes it's like, hey, look, this sucks. It's not going to work. I remember dating someone that was here on a visa. Visa expires. What are you going to do? You can't get another one now. That work visa expired. We understood from the beginning this is how it's going to be. And it's going to come to an end. And when that end comes, we're both going to be sad. And we're both going to be sadder because you kind of want what you can't have. So just knowing that you can't do this because of circumstances outside of your control makes you want it more. But if you're a grown adult, right, and you can see that it's a delusion to think that you're just gonna be dating someone that lives in another country, and you know they can't even come back to your country, and going over there is just gonna be a short thing, and it's one of those things that you meet the right person at the wrong time, or maybe at the right time, but the logistics are different. But I digress. We go back to love bombing, idealization, grooming. You know, we idealize people when we come out of a bad situation. We idealize jobs. You get out of a bad job and you're offered a better job, and all of a sudden, all your brain can see are the good things, right? the reticular activation system of your brain, the RAS. It's a selective focus that only sees the good things. So you meet a toxic person at the beginning, like a narcissist, both of your brains are hyper focused on the good things. Both of your brains are comparing that person to the ex. Both of your brains are looking to see if this is going to work long term, and you're overly invested in it because it's a good thing. All right, guys. So if you got some value from this clip and would like to see some more stuff, click right here. And if you would like to see the entire video, click right here.